today. When I reflect on the last few years, I think about resiliency and commitment. We are still reeling from the adversities and struggles that the pandemic brought, but we have seen great resiliency in our revenues, our economy, and most especially our people. While there may still be challenges ahead in the economy, I'm optimistic that they will continue to improve, and our strategic investments will assist with this recovery. When thinking about our collective resiliency, I reflect on promises kept, especially the promise that when revenues returned from the declines of the Great Recession, that we would restore items that had been lost. Today, I'm pleased to tell you that we are on the path to restoration. In this budget, we have made significant investments in education, natural resources, public safety, and human services. For instance, we are chipping away at the funding cap on support positions in K12 education over both years of the biennium. We have embraced increased teacher and state employee pay, and in addition have added to the compensation increase, we have added a one-time bonus for teachers and state employees. We also maintained and added to role-specific compensation increases for public safety officers to address recruitment and retention challenges, and provided a historic increase in 599 funding for local police departments. Additionally, the committee was able to fund other high-priority commitments, including increasing provider rates to ensure health care access to our most vulnerable Virginians, making historic investments in water quality and land preservation, and providing unprecedented state parks support. The committee has embraced this new funding while also making prudent and fiscally responsible investments to reserves, to the Virginia retirement system, and to one-time items, including cash for capital outlay projects and supplements. These investments have been supported in the usual bipartisan fashion of this committee, and they will serve us well if there are any further economic disruptions in the next biennium. The Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee members have worked diligently to bring before you this afternoon their recommendations. Their recommendations for amendments to the current budget, Senate Bill 29, and the proposed biennial budget, Senate Bill 30. I thank them for their tireless efforts to produce the subcommittee reports. Additional priorities of committee members are reflected in the subcommittee report as well. We will hear briefly from each subcommittee chair, and after the report has been presented, I will ask that the report and related amendments be accepted. After all the subcommittee reports have been issued, I'll ask that the introduced Senate Bill 29 be amended in accordance with the subcommittee reports, and that the bill, as amended, be reported. I will then ask that the introduced Senate Bill 30 be amended in accordance with the subcommittee reports, and that bill, as amended, be reported. Now that I've outlined the committee priorities and the process, I will ask Senator Saslaw to provide the report of the K12 Education Subcommittee. Yeah.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, your subcommittee has reviewed the governor's introduced budget for public education. The introduced budget reflected many of our priorities in public education, and the subcommittee maintained the recommendations. Major among them, 5% salary increase each year for teachers and staff, $500 million one-time cash infusion for school construction, funds to hold divisions harmless for the re-benchmarking data affected by COVID-19 school closures, funding to support learning for students at risk, those who are at risk for falling behind as a result of COVID, and funding to support learning for students at risk for falling behind, period. Investments in our early childhood program, infusions and sustained contributions into the teacher retirement plan, and ensuring literary funds are available for school construction and loan and subsidies. And by the way, the VRS now, both from the teacher standpoint and total standpoint, is at 87% funded. So it's out of the danger area. As the subcommittee developed our recommendations, we focused our efforts on the way to acknowledge our educators and school staff for their commitment to our children, address unfinished learning among our students, and assist in preparations for the education pipeline, because as you know, we're running short, and particularly in some of the school areas. Overall, our recommendations provide an additional $115 million in FY 2023 and $159 million in 2024 over the introduced budget. This increases, and this is important, this increases the direct aid and spending by $1.5 billion in FY 2023 over FY 2022. So it's a lot. And $1.2 billion FY 2024. The total increase over the last biennium is $2.7 billion. We proposed $272 million over the biennium to provide more state funding for support positions by the employed by the divisions. And if you notice, the school superintendents, that was a high priority item with them. We set it at 20 per thousand almost a decade ago. This is a step towards eliminating the funding cap placed on the positions, as I mentioned, that was implemented nearly a decade ago. This ensures the Commonwealth is recognizing more of the actual cost to provide students and instructors with the necessary support so students can prepare to engage in learning, don't have to worry about other things like, trash not being picked up, roofs leaking, things like that. We got a lot of areas are having problems. We also recommended $137 million from ARPA to provide our funded teachers and support staff with a bonus of $1,000 per position in June. Now, it's a one-time, it comes to a 1.9% pay increase overall, less in some divisions, more in some other divisions. The subcommittee understands the burden already placed on divisions to match the 5% salary increase the next biennium. Therefore, this $1,000 bonus is provided and there's no required match by local governments. But it's only one time. The subcommittee also recognizes how critical reading is for student success, especially among early learners. We recommend funding to provide a reading specialist for every 550 students, kindergarten through third grade, with the flexibility to allow these same specialists to work with students grades 4 through 6. Other recommendations include $15 million from ARPA to provide $5,000 recruitment incentives for teachers filling vacancies in hard-to-fill positions or hard-to-staff schools. And as you all know, that's becoming more and more of a problem. $4 million from ARPA to support existing before school and after school or summer learning programs. $1.5 million to the general fund to support statewide efforts to increase our educator workforce, and an additional $500,000 in general fund to support teacher residency programs. The subcommittee continues with its commitment to support and respond to the challenges faced by our students and educators. And with that, I would recommend approval of the subcommittee report.
It's been moved and seconded that the subcommittee report on K12 education be accepted. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? It's accepted. Next, Senator Lucas, Public Safety.
I can't thank the staff enough, and I want everybody to know that for all the hard work they did. Thanks a lot.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, the Public Safety Subcommittee has reviewed the governor's proposed budget for the agencies of Public Safety and Homeland Security and Veterans and Defense Affairs. Overall, the subcommittee adopts many of the proposals in the introduced budget and recommends additional amendments that result in a net total of $70 million in general fund support for these agencies over the biennium. A major focus of the subcommittee was increasing compensation for public safety officers. Virginia's dedicated law enforcement officers have worked tirelessly amidst increasing retention and recruitment challenges. Addressing salaries and pay compensation or compression helps attract well-qualified candidates, further the goals of criminal justice reform, and fosters a positive environment for both the officers and those they serve. To that end, the subcommittee recommends fully funding the compensation actions for sworn and correctional officers proposed in the introduced budget. The subcommittee also recommends salary increases for probation and parole officers and Department of Juvenile Justice officers, as well as bonuses for non-security employees of the Department of Corrections. Finally, the subcommittee endorses a historic increase of nearly $50 million across 3 fiscal years for Virginia's aid to local police departments or 599 programs. The subcommittee recommends $27.4 million over the biennium for a new Virginia Center for Firearm Violence Prevention and Intervention. Virginia's gun violence crisis requires a comprehensive response that incorporates research, data collection, coordination, public awareness, and community-tailored intervention. The subcommittee recommendation supports a response and includes $10 million each year in grants for local initiatives led by community-based organizations, hospitals, and health social services, and law enforcement agencies. The subcommittee continues its support for the Cannabis Control Authority as it establishes a retail cannabis market that prioritizes consumer safety and social equity. This recommendation includes the amount requested by the authority to become fully operational. With passage of Senate Bill 391, significant additional fee and tax revenues will be dedicated to the Virginia Cannabis Equity Loan Fund. The fund enables qualified social equity applicants, especially those harmed by prior criminalization of marijuana, to meaningfully participate in the new cannabis opportunities. Additionally, the subcommittee maintains its commitment to Virginia's veterans by adopting the proposals in the introduced budget for suicide and opiate use prevention, as well as additional service positions at the Department of Veteran Services. Other subcommittee recommendations include targeted investments in veteran housing and employment training, grants for sexual assault forensic examiners, and pretrial and community correction investments. In closing, Madam Chair and members of the committee, I would like to thank the members of Public Safety Subcommittee for their collaboration and assistance in developing this report, and joining Senator Saslaw in thanking our staff for all of the hard work that they put in to help make this possible. Madam Chair, this concludes the Public Safety Subcommittee report, and I hope it will be the pleasure of the committee to adopt our amendments, and I so move.
It's been, thank you, Senator Lucas. It's been moved and seconded that the Public Safety Committee report and related amendments be accepted. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next is Senator Barker with Transportation.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, your Transportation Subcommittee has reviewed the governor's introduced budget for the Office of Transportation, and we've enhanced it a little bit, as you will hear briefly. In recognition of the robust revenue growth in fiscal year 21, which has continued at least through the first 7 months of fiscal year 2022, we recommend allocating a total of $305.8 million in general fund revenues for identified transportation priorities in fiscal year 2022, with an additional $25 million in general funds to expand on those initiatives in fiscal year 2023. Our proposed amendments build on investments identified in last year's transportation initiative, which was significant, and provide funding for several of the Commonwealth's high priority but still unfunded transportation needs, including the following. $190 million for widening about 9 miles of I-64 in both directions between mile marker 223 and about exit 234. That's in James County, and we'll complete the widening up to the new Kent County line. Second item is $50 million to establish a state trails office within the Virginia Department of Transportation and enhance our existing network of state and local multi-use bicycle and pedestrian facilities. We also propose $45 million for improvements to the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, which got a little notoriety this weekend with a flight that took off from there. And in addition, we are adding $30 million in funding for city street maintenance payments, which have been taxed a good bit lately. We've also set aside $10 million for distance-based commuter bus service in the Transit Ridership Incentive Fund, which will help us be able to get long-haul commuters from where they live to where they work. In addition, we have $5 million for projects to remediate the loss of wildlife habitat impacted by the construction of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. And we are proposing $796,000 for customer service enhancements and automation at the Department of Motor Vehicles. With the historic levels of general fund revenues and significant increases in formula funding available through the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and major steps that we've taken over the last 2 years, we believe that we can get by for the first year of the biennium with the transportation funding levels that we would have, and even with reductions at the state and local levels from loss of transportation funds associated with reduction in the sales tax on groceries. In recognition of the policy decision to move forward on the reduction in sales taxes on groceries, the subcommittee acknowledges that we need to reduce the anticipated Commonwealth Transportation Fund revenues by $190.1 million over the next biennium. Madam Chair, this completes the report of your Transportation Subcommittee. I hope it will be the pleasure of the committee to adopt our amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Barker.
And I move those amendments. So.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the report and related amendments be accepted. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? They're accepted. Next, Senator Deeds, capital outlay.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the Capital Outlay Subcommittee worked hard to get through the budget and also the proposed amendments. As you will recall, the introduced budget included almost $3.7 billion over the biennium for capital outlay, with more than $2.5 billion of that in general fund cash, $989 million in non-general fund cash, and $157 million in non-C and non-D bond proceeds. The amount of general fund cash funding for capital projects is quite astonishing, and in many ways, spending in capital reflects the one-time nature of the Commonwealth's available resources. We studied the increasing cost to projects in progress and the projects in the pipeline due to inflation and supply chain issues. And quite frankly, we won't know the full impact of those inflationary pressures until the projects are awarded contracts. The subcommittee balanced the need for additional capital projects with the significant unknowns of our currently committed projects. And as always, we maintained our longstanding practice of strong fiscal management and resisted the urge to issue more debt, even if it is available in our debt capacity model. We have over $5 billion in unauthorized but unissued debt, so we must continue managing the pipeline for construction projects and refrain from using additional debt capacity in times when economic conditions are volatile. Our recommended amendments included increase overall general fund cash and capital outlay by almost $23 million as compared to the introduced budget. We recommend allocating an additional $50 million from the general fund to supplement existing projects with cost overruns, totaling with the general fund or with what's already in the budget, $150 million over the biennium for these overruns. We recommend using $85 million from the general fund to address maintenance reserve projects at our state parks. We recommend planning for the replacement of the State Police Training Academy. We endorse projects focused on infrastructure, safety projects. We also recommend deferring several construction projects at the community colleges until we can better understand their projected enrollments, and instead recommend detailed planning for these projects. Madam Chair, this completes the report of the Subcommittee on Capital Outlay, and I'd like to conclude by expressing my appreciation to the members for their diligent work and for the staff for their more than diligent work to make sure we could get make these recommendations. And I would move the report be accepted.
Thank you, Senator Deeds. It's been moved and seconded the capital outlay report be adopted. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's adopted. Next is Senator Locke, higher education.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Your subcommittee has reviewed the governor's proposed biennial budget for higher education. This budget, with our recommended amendments, underscores our ongoing support for student access and achievement in the Commonwealth's colleges and universities. With that in mind, we endorse the following items. We are pleased to include more than $280 million over the biennium in new financial aid and incentives for students. Within this, we add $50.3 million to develop and implement long-term solutions to increase enrollment and degree completion among Pell-eligible students, and increase individual awards under the Tuition Assistance Grant. Under our amendments, TAG awards for each eligible graduate health student will more than double, matching the awards for undergrads. We also restore awards for online students to their earlier level, bringing them back up to 50% of in-person undergraduate awards. We approved $33.2 million to expand on-campus student support services, ranging from academic advising to mental health counselors at HBCUs and community colleges. We endorsed $27.7 million to increase the availability of high-quality, intentional internships, apprenticeship, and fellowships for students across the Commonwealth to gain meaningful work experience. Within this, we include an additional $14.2 million to expand valuable internship opportunities across the state through the Virginia Talent Plus Opportunity Partnership. We retain $97 million each year in enhanced operational support to ensure that higher education remains accessible. After 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have become more acutely aware of the needs of our students. To this end, we have offered recommendations that prioritize students facing the highest degree of challenges while recognizing that all of our students are struggling more than they have in the past. Many thanks to the staff for their work with this subcommittee and the many hours working with us on this report. We hope it will be the pleasure of the committee to adopt our amendments, and I so move.
It's been moved and seconded that the amendments of the higher education subcommittee be adopted. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? They're adopted. Thank you, Senator Locke. Senator Peterson, General Government.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Your subcommittee on general government has reviewed the provisions of Senate Bills 29 and 30 as introduced for those portions of the budget that fall under the subcommittee on general government. The areas contained within general government are expansive, touching numerous secretariats and dozens of agencies. Under the legislative agencies, the subcommittee prioritized addressing both physical and cyber security, as well as workload, staffing, and compensation issues, including a total of $5.6 million as compensation, new compensation for the Division of Capitol Police and the Division of Legislative Services. In the Judicial Department, $5.3 million each year is provided to increase the pay for all district court clerks by $2,500, and $15.7 million over the biennium is included to add 120 new General District Court clerk positions. In the area of administration, the subcommittee adopted several proposals contained in the budget as introduced, including $89.5 million for a targeted compensation initiative for deputy sheriffs. In addition, $22.6 million is provided to increase jail per diems for both state and local responsible inmates. In the area of finance, funding is added to provide a full $1 billion, and that's probably the biggest change that we've had, a full $1 billion deposit to the Virginia retirement system to reduce retirement plans and other post-benefit plans unfunded liabilities, which is projected to save over $1.7 billion in contribution rate savings over the coming years. And this is not in my text, but I heard Senator Sasslaw say that would leave us at 87% funding for the VRS plan. And in the area of central appropriations, in addition to adopting a 5% per year salary increase for state employees and state-supported local employees, including teachers, in each year of the biennium, we have also provided an additional $102.5 million for a $1,000 bonus for state employees to be paid on June 1st of this year. Madam Chair, this completes the report of the subcommittee, and I would move for its passage.
Thank you, Senator Peterson. It's been moved and seconded the committee report and amendments be adopted. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? They're adopted. Senator Marsden, Economic Development and Natural Resources.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Your subcommittee on Economic Development and Natural Resources has carefully reviewed the governor's introduced budget for the Secretariats of Agriculture and Forestry, Commerce and Trade, Labor, and Natural Resources. We have thoughtfully considered these proposals along with those offered by our Senate colleagues. As Virginia's robust economy continues to experience remarkable growth coming out of the pandemic, we must apply the lessons learned from COVID while positioning the Commonwealth for future economic success. To this end, the subcommittee recommends more than $500 million in new investments in commerce and trade above the budget we adopted just 1 year ago. Growing all sectors of Virginia's economy across all regions of the Commonwealth is a key priority of the subcommittee. As such, the subcommittee endorses a strategic investment of $150 million in the development of business-ready sites. Allocations of this funding will benefit every corner of the Commonwealth and strengthen Virginia's ability to recruit new businesses and are looking to make capital investments in new localities in the immediate future. Keeping existing commitments to our business partners is another key priority of the subcommittee. In this respect, the committee recommends providing more than $100 million to meet our commitments to Amazon HQ2 and other MEI-related projects. One hard-learned lesson of the pandemic is that the health of our economy and our society depends upon growing innovative industries from the research being undertaken at our institutions of higher learning, particularly in the area of biosciences, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, and data analytics. To enhance our ability to compete for private, philanthropic, and federal research funding in these critical areas, the subcommittee recommends a generational investment of more than $100 million in transformational projects across the Commonwealth. Additionally, statewide access to broadband and quality affordable housing are concerns for many Virginians that the pandemic only intensified. Our recommendations include a record total investment of $300 million over the biennium for the Housing Trust Fund. The budget we recommend also includes almost $100 million over the biennium for broadband infrastructure through the Virginia Telecommunication Initiative. These and other recommended investments in community and economic development reflect the subcommittee's determination to support our citizens and our employers as we navigate our way out of the challenges of the pandemic. Another hard-learned lesson from the pandemic must be addressed, as is the performance of the Virginia Employment Commission and the impact that years of underinvestment have had on the individuals and businesses that rely on the VEC. To this end, the subcommittee recommends an additional deposit of $110 million in Federal American Rescue Plan Act funds to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund to prevent the unemployment tax rate on all Virginia businesses from increasing, as well as a series of JLARC recommended amendments to address claims, adjudication, citizen appeals, and IT challenges at the VEC. Your subcommittee strongly embraces our shared commitment to environmental stewardship and recommends providing almost $515 million for new investments in the areas of natural and historic resources and agriculture and forestry. Of this new spending, a record $313 million deposit to the Water Quality Improvement Fund will provide more than $230 million in support of continued investments in cost-effective agricultural best management practices that improve the long-term health of our beloved Chesapeake Bay. Additionally, these funds support remediation efforts for harmful algal blooms occurring in both the Shenandoah River and Lake Anna. The subcommittee believes in strengthening our commitment to land conservation programs and recommends more than $40 million to be deposited in FY 2023 to Virginia's 3 flagship land conservation funds. As you know, the pandemic also intensified the demand being placed on Virginia state parks, and the subcommittee recommends approximately $20 million in new operating support for our world-class park system. Focusing on our challenging climate, we recommend a total of $30 million be invested to reduce Virginia's reliance on carbon-based power sources and to begin addressing the real-world impacts of climate change that Virginians are expecting today. Specifically, the subcommittee recommends $10 million to capitalize a new fund to provide for the distribution of electric vehicle charging stations across economically distressed regions of the Commonwealth. Additionally, the subcommittee recommends $10 million for incentives to homeowners that elect to install solar power and $10 million to capitalize the Resilient Virginia Revolving Fund with an eye towards beginning the long process of remediation efforts in flood-prone regions of the Commonwealth. This completes the report of the Economic Development and Natural Resources Subcommittee. I hope it will be the pleasure of the committee to adopt our amendments. And I want to thank Senators Hanger, Ruff, Barker, Saslaw, and Howell as members of that committee, and to staff member Jason Powell, who did double duty on this committee this year. And with that, Madam Chair, I move the amendments be adopted.
It's been moved and seconded that the report and amendments to by the Economic Development and Natural Resources Subcommittee be agreed to. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Senator Marsden. Senator Hanger, Health and Human Resources.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm pleased to provide the report of the Health and Human Resources Subcommittee. The subcommittee has reviewed the governor's proposed budget and over 200 member requests for the agencies in health and human resources. Most of those 200 amendments were good ideas, but you can only put so many good ideas in one budget. So we had to reject a few. In the recommendations before you, the subcommittee has focused on increasing Medicaid provider rates, continued investment in the behavioral health system, and expanding efforts to better support the healthcare workforce. The subcommittee's recommendations include over $270 million in additional general fund investments in health and human resources that, combined with the adopted amendments into an introduced budget, total nearly $2.1 billion. Over the past 2 years, we have all been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, not just in our daily lives, but in the disruption that has been impacted virtually every aspect of life. In human services, the disruptions in the labor force have resulted in significant challenges in providing services to many of our most vulnerable Virginians. The subcommittee recommends over $660 million to increase rates for developmental disability services, home and community-based services, personal care, dental service, vision services, and others. While higher rates alone cannot resolve the labor challenges of Medicaid providers, it will assist in promoting stability for the Virginians they serve to receive the care and support that they need. The subcommittee also adopts over $230 million in additional investments to continue to strengthen the community-based behavioral health system in the state psychiatric hospitals. The pandemic has greatly impacted our state hospitals due to COVID outbreaks and labor shortages. As such, the subcommittee recommends adopting $90 million over the biennium to provide needed compensation adjustments for direct care staff. In addition, $140 million over the biennium is recommended by the subcommittee to build on the significant investments in community-based services by the General Assembly over the past few years. These include permanent supportive housing, full implementation of the STEP Virginia initiative to establish a continuum of services at community service boards, and expansion of crisis services in the Commonwealth. The subcommittee further recommends over $37 million for community service boards to provide staff retention and recruitment bonuses to help address workforce issues. Out of the available American Rescue Plan Act funding, the subcommittee recommended $70 million for reimbursement of COVID-19 costs for private hospitals and locally owned nursing homes. There are many other recommendations that increase support for the healthcare workforce, people with disabilities, public health, and social services. This funding continues critical investments in health and human resources, and I am proud of the work of the subcommittee in adopting these recommendations. As I conclude, let me thank the members, the individual members of the subcommittee, for the time they invested in putting this report together. I sincerely appreciate all of the time and effort and contributions made by each member of the subcommittee, and in particular, our staff member, Mike Tweedy, who is available early and late and gives us good guidance as we put our report together. With that, Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the report for the Health and Human Resources.
Thank you, Senator Hanger, for your leadership in this. It's been moved and seconded that the committee report be adopted and the amendments be agreed to. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Resources Subcommittee, April.
Madam Chair, I will note that the Resources Subcommittee is a table or spreadsheet format related to the either positive or negative changes above Senate Bill 29 or Senate Bill 30 as introduced. The majority of those changes fall into things such as balances, revenues, and transfers. This year, the majority of the changes were under the revenues section, and I'll note the majority of those changes are related to legislation that was passed out of the committee. I'll also note at the bottom of page 1, you'll see the mid-session revenue forecast that you received on Friday, so that has been picked up there. I'll note that there were 3 small changes to transfers, the largest one being a technical correction to a double count that was included in the introduced bill related to the ABC. And lastly, Madam Chair, I will tell you that your unappropriated balance with all of those changes is $23.9 million.
Thank you, April. And before I ask for a motion to accept and report the committee report, I also want to thank our staff for your work. It's just an amazing blessing to be able to work with each and every one of you. You are so knowledgeable, so giving of your time and knowledge. It's truly an inspiration for me, and I'm sure for every other member of the committee. We can't thank you enough. So thank you. And now I'd like a motion on Senate Bill 29 that it be reported as amended. It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 29 as amended be reported. All in favor, please record your vote.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Ayes 15, no zero. The bill is reported. And how about Senate Bill 30? It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 30 be reported as amended. All in favor, please record your vote. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Ayes 15, no zero. That bill is also reported. Thank you again. We've done the first about third of our work, and now we'll deal with the House.
Well done, John.